Afternoon. I'm Debbie Wilson. Thank you for being here. For everybody that is currently on the phone. And you should have all received an agenda from Sandra last Friday, I believe it went out. There's a number of items on it. We're going to change something around a little bit. We're going to start off with Lori Manos is going to talk about number 5, the eligibility effort funding.
Sure. I know, right? So for those of you who have participated in some of the case management committee meetings, we've been talking for a while about the fact that we have been working with HHS to pay for some of the enrollment activities that are done for people that are entering the waiver, right? So there are certain things that happen when people get a waiver slot that case managers have to do that can't necessarily be billed under case management. A good example is when somebody gets a slot and you're never able to find them, right? Spend all this time looking for them and you never locate them and you do a non-signature declination. We've been working with HHS about putting that in the admin contract. We came up with a rate that they agreed to. And so at this point, DDSN has not finalized the admin contract with HHS, but Mary and Pat can correct me if I'm wrong, DDSN is kind of at the point where we feel comfortable paying the providers, and then we'll go back and get the money from the admin contract once that gets finalized. So what we are doing is we've gone through July through October. Okay, so 4 months of people who were pending waiver that are no longer pending waiver. Okay, so the payment happens anytime a person is pending, goes from pending to not pending, meaning they enroll or they decline or there's a non-signature declination or for whatever reason they were pending and then they weren't. We've run reports for each month about who was pending at the beginning of the month and is not pending at the end of the month. And you'll get a one-time payment for each one of those people. It's $150.50 per person. Okay. So LaKenya and Debbie and I met this morning, and we are going to do a manual invoice for July through October for each agency. That payment is going to be done possibly tomorrow. Okay. So you'll get that first payment. And then we are going to process payments every other month, but they will be for a month in arrears. So on the February, what's it called?
Okay. On the February payment schedule, right, the one that would come out around the 16th of the month, it's going to be for November, December. So, and I'll send an email out to all of the finance directors so that you're aware of when the payments should be coming. And it'll be like February 16th, April 16th will be for January and February, and so forth and so on. Those payments from then forward after this first one are going to come on your payment schedules. They're not going to be separate. It isn't going to be a separate payment made to the bank for you like intake was. It's going to be added into your payment schedule. And if you have any questions, feel free to give me shoot me an email. And the other piece of it too is if when you're going through and you're checking to make sure you've received payment for everybody, if you're missing anything, get with Lori and we will do those as individual manual payments thereafter.
Yeah, let me say this. We had to make a decision about which provider we pay. Okay, I'll give you an example. Johnny gets a waiver slot and he goes through 5 providers before he gets to the point of enrollment or declination or whatever. So we can't pay all 5 providers. So we are paying the provider who holds the case when it is finished. Okay? whoever has it, when it enrolls, when the person declines, when the slot is finished, is who gets the payment. It is kind of a manual process. It's coming from 2 data sets. Ben's running part of it, Darby's running part of it. So we will send you the backup documentation about who we're paying you for, and if you determine that there's somebody that we didn't pay you for, if you'll contact me, we'll do research, we'll figure it out. We think that we have it pretty accurate, but I always worry that we miss something. The other thing about the payment that is so far in arrears, like we're going to pay you in February, November, and December. Part of that is to ensure that all of the enrollments are keyed timely, right? So I don't want to work on December enrollments until about mid-January, because I need to make sure that everything gets keyed into MMIS and everything gets keyed into tracking.
Any questions?
Excuse me. At the end of the year, I'm trying to think through this. At the end of the year,
It's also going to be less as we move forward. You realize we got this real big influx of slots, and we don't have a lot of new slots in the system, so it's not going to be as much unless new slots get allocated.
so at the end of the year, we would expect to get the June, those slots, 150 slots, about J Hill. Expect to get that in.
Yeah, and if that's a problem, we can work on something related to end of the year. I don't want to mess anybody up. Is that?
I don't think it's significant.
Yeah, well, you know what, we'll evaluate it as we go down the road a little bit to see what type of issues we'll run into and what dollars we're looking at. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay,
We just wanted to get you paid.
yeah,
I think that asking, we've made enough changes, but you can't ask people to do stuff that you're not paying for. So those are the 2 things. We still don't have the admin contract signed, but we feel confident we're on a good ground with that. And what the heck, we're not getting paid for the other case management either, so we'll just throw that on the $9 million pile and be done with it. Because we haven't gotten paid for the regular case management yet. They're still having a glitch with their system. So we're getting rejected. We're working on it, but I don't think it's not an issue. It's in the contract. It's just a matter of clearing up previous years.
Okay,
Great, thanks, y'all.
good to go?
Yep.
Andrew?
So this is like the witness check?
The subject chair.
Yeah.
Andrew, you can introduce your new partners.
Yeah, I'm going to, good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know, my name is Andrew Theron. I took over the engineering department in, I think, July this year. And Chris, been working with him a lot to kind of develop long-term and future budgets for the agency. And we've got an issue that he wanted me to come down and talk about that we've been discussing recently. But before I get started with that, I got Mr. Seth Leslie right here to my left-hand side. He's our new engineer in the department. And again, I recognize some of y'all, not all of you, though. I'm more used to dealing with the EDs and the maintenance staff. But you guys might see myself or Seth in the future as we get more involved with the financial team here. But the issue that Chris wanted me to come talk about was the R22 refrigerant issue that's come down the pike here. And for those of you who don't know, R22 is it's a real commonly used refrigerant in all HVAC systems. And back in the end of the 80s, that y'all might have heard or be familiar with the Montreal Protocol that led to the Clean Air Act of the 1990s. They said that this stuff is a greenhouse gas and they're starting to phase it out. Well, starting in 2020, as of January 1st, they're not making this stuff anymore. So they discontinued all manufacture of R22 refrigerant and importing it into the United States. There are still supplies left that will only be available for existing units. So what this means for you guys and for providers out there is that, typical maintenance issues that you might have had in the past are going to lead to, you're probably going to have to replace your unit because they don't run off of R22 anymore. They've upgraded to the 410A, which is a more environmentally friendly refrigerant. So Chris wanted me to talk about that from a budget standpoint and just kind of give you guys a heads up that, to get in your budgets or plan in the future, where if you were used to repairing these types of units, in the future, it's probably going to lead to a replacement due to the stuff not being available. If you do have any units that are probably about 10 years old, that's probably the type of units that you're looking at with this stuff in them now. They've kind of started phasing out over the past couple years. I'm not going to say you don't have any new units that has R22 in it, but it's for the most part phased out of newer units. But if you're dealing with anything old, the cost to repair this stuff in the very near future, it's going to skyrocket. So if you're dealing with older units or anything like that, you're just going to have to bite the bullet and replace something that you normally repair. And I think that's all Chris kind of wanted me to get into in that topic, and just kind of make you guys aware of it. So if you got any other specific questions about it, you can feel free to contact me. And also just to kind of throw it out there, been talking to Chris also about some of the long-term budget things and things that you guys need to be thinking about. And I've kind of started doing a lot of research since I've gotten into the position. And if you got facilities out there, kind of a good rule of thumb to look at from a maintenance budget standpoint is if you take the cost to replace your facility, about 2% of that cost per year is about what you need to be budgeting out for maintenance and repairs of that facility. And those are things that we'll get into down the road as we kind of start developing these long-term budgets. But it's something I've started researching, and that's just kind of some initial finds I've found on it, and kind of a good ballpark number. So it's just something for y'all to think about. But again, that's just some initial researching that I've come up with there. But I think
2% of the
2%
budget or
2% of 2% of the replacement value for the building. Yeah, would be a good just ballpark estimate, rule of thumb figure to go by to budget on an annual basis for repair and maintenance. So, but really again, that's a much bigger topic. We're just kind of stopping by today to again let y'all know about the R22 situation that's going on. So it is going to depend on how many buildings you have, what type of units you have, the age of them. It's something that's definitely going to start affecting people as a couple of days ago when they stopped making and importing this stuff.
So if we have DVSN owned buildings, should we start having some HVAC problems tomorrow?
Yes. There are conversion options that are available for these things, but I don't think that you really want to get into those unless you're dealing with something where you need it right now. The conversion kits are costly themselves, and it's kind of analogy would be, say you want to take your diesel truck and make it run off of gasoline. Well, you can keep the tires, you can keep the windshield wipers, but everything else pretty much has to be swapped out to make that happen. So it's not an easy conversion. But it'll be an option for some things, but it shouldn't be a real option for most things. But again, today just kind of want to stop by and throw that out there for you guys to think.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Vicky Wilkes?
More than that.
Here's the rest.
Tyler, you don't know I wasn't gonna let you get away with that.
I'm handing out a PowerPoint I put together a number of months or a couple of years ago, but what I'm talking about today is on the flip side, on the back side, trust fund. Being a good steward, I had it duplex. One of my pet peeves is duplexing and 14-inch paper. So to speak very quickly, are there any for-profits in the room? Okay, so everybody I'm talking to, pages 1 through 9 of this apply to all providers and to both residential and non-residential. A lot of people think I do just residential, and that's not the case. The last page, the flip side, is about the trust fund. And right before Christmas, we got a little Christmas present, finally, of their new manuals, which really haven't changed at all, except that a lot of you, or about 10 of you, were stuck in a moratorium to not be reapproved for participation in the trust fund. There are two things, a participation app and a group home app. You have to get approved to participate before you can do the individual specific site group home apps. And of course, all of that is within the DDSN capital directive and process and all that kind of stuff on pages 1 through 9. But they are going to keep the 2-year requirement. Like once you're approved, it's good for 2 years. So those of you who were 6/30/19s, there are 10 of you, they're just going to go ahead and do a window of, say, March the 13th. Picked it, a Friday the 13th. And you can get your things into them. Now, this is the one thing you do with the trust fund fairly individually with them. We prepare a letter of partnership that we're committed to y'all and we will be continuing to do business with you, yada, yada. That's it. You take it, you mail it to the trust fund. Those of you who would have expired, 6/30/20, can go ahead and do it now if you've got a little bit of a lull. You feel like gathering all this stuff, or you can just start gathering and do it after June 30th. In other words, if you were good through June 30th, like Lindsay, Community Options, you can go ahead and apply, say, the May cycle with a house, with don't do a thing. What they're trying to prevent is a lot of people coming to them, they're not doing business with. You go to a lot of trouble. But a couple years ago, most of the people we did business with the trust fund had not gotten approval. So they didn't anticipate that DDSN was going to ask them to do a couple of houses, or they didn't think about the certain replacement. And talking to trust fund staff yesterday, there's a new person in the head. She does not know us yet, and so forth. She said, tell them we need new development. Tell them we need lots of new houses. They've got lots of money. We're like, sorry, we don't have the operating money. So believe it or not, Chris yesterday, with a twinkle in his eye, said, consider replacements. Now might be the time to consider replacing houses. Now, that's another whole story. Get with me, get with your district people, and we get Mary and Rufus and Pat, Chris to sign off on it, and be prepared to take some financial cash flow issues. But DDSN will continue to just do the minimum 25% match to the trust fund. And what we've been doing lately is, presume it's a replacement house of an existing house DDSN had money in, we do it as an equity interest. So you're carrying the bag until the old house sells and or the trust fund money comes in. Trust fund money may come in a lot earlier than the old house sells. So at least you've got some money to pay down a bridge loan or whatever. So that's kind of in a nutshell all of that. The group home application itself has not really changed. The funding cycles are still the same. There again, they want those to come to me. They're on the website now. Ignore the fact that they say send them by email. That they're talking about a whole nother realm of providers that they deal with that don't include our realm. And they want them to come to me, just like before, an original and a copy set, and I'll tweak it or just, I literally drive it to the trust fund. So that's all pretty much the same. Now, we've had a little increase. A couple of years ago, it went from 75,000 to 100,000. That made a huge difference to what you're looking at in the neighborhoods. 20-year compliance period. Compliance is a term that is a little lucid right at the moment, but elusive, whatever. But we can deal with that. It's just that you keep the house going. A lot of you have old, like 1995 houses, may have been under a restricted covenant for 30 years. On a case-by-case basis, if it's been at least 20 years, we've been able to finagle with some hand-holding and whatever and so forth, pleading, to get them to say nothing's due back. Let me mention, if you've got a house, you don't plan to replace it, it's there, it's over 20 years old, but you're not going to do anything with it. Even if you were to sell it and they do a satisfaction or mortgage, they don't have the staff time to just go back and say, okay, in 1994 we did this much business with DDSN. Let's release all those liens. Nah, they're going to do it on a case by case. They're going to wait till you're ready to sell it. And so forth. But remember, always let us know before you try to sell a house. Whether or not we have money in it, there are all kinds of repercussions there and so forth. And we just want to stay compliant and stay together on the same sheet of paper. So any questions? Yeah.
This is probably not for you, baby, but when DDSN entertained the idea of using this housing trust fund money as a replacement alternative to, let's say we have 2 CRCFs that you all own. We do one replacement house and we convert those CRCFs to CTH2s and then use the other house for the new houses for CTH2s, and that kind of gets you out of the.
And not operate a CRCF? You might want to do the financial analysis on that, because I'm sure you're getting OSS funds in that home.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, part of looking at that is an 8-bed unit really person-centered?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, I think it could be. It depends on how you operate it. So I think that's a semantic thing that under how you manage that. But if that's your choice, that's your choice. I would just make sure you run the financial analysis to make sure that you're not going to put yourself in a hole because of it.
Yeah, but my question is, would you all entertain the match, the 25% match on, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to answer.
Hey, we're getting rid of houses, everything on the table.
I have no trouble with that, but I also remind, if you're replacing a house, like I remember replacing a 2-story house because I hate 2-story CTHs, that's crazy, and with a 1-story, and kind of negotiated at that time to move DDSN's money from the sale of that house into, and that's how we're doing this. We're just rolling over money, and you wouldn't have that option. There wouldn't be any money from DDSN in that, since we own the home. So you would get the $25,000 match for each home that you purchase. Yes, I have no problem.
Right, but you're not getting any equity out. Yeah, which is good.
Okay.
But as you all keep talking about moving to divest yourself of this property, I mean,
Divesting means just giving it to you.
I know. So then the question becomes, is if I wait for you to give it to me, and then I move on, then do I own the property and do I?
And then equity to sell.
No, do I get the?
If you have the property, then it's your property. We're not putting strings on it.
There's a deal in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
I think
if we say we're giving somebody property, I guess we should take, the state thing, as I'm not used to all the state stuff, so we might want to make sure that there's no strings from the state. There wouldn't be any strings from Mary Poole, but it might be from the state. That might be a decision that's not mine. That might have something to do with, what is the department that does this?
Real property,
Administrator.
Department of Admin.
Yeah.
Department of Admin. We have to get permission from them to do all this stuff anyway. So it would be up to them. Because even when we sell property that belongs to us, we have to give money to them.
Half of it.
Half of it to them.
Unless your legislative delegations put together a proviso. So anyway, y'all be in touch. Ralph, yeah.
Not really, there's so much donating money to us.
Yeah.
What time is the DDS notification? Is that when it's probated or?
This is kind of a hanger-on, because, you know, we've had few and far between things, but yeah, we've had them. So it does affect, I remember some discussion years ago, would we want, obviously you can't look a gift horse in the mouth, so to speak, but if you're being the recipient of something that's a white elephant, maybe you want to gently say, you know, thank you, but no, or maybe there are people, program people and so forth, to say that building is totally non-compliant. It would cost you an arm and a leg to get it to compliancy, you know, to licensure, et cetera. So but I know a lot of people own things. We've always said, we don't want y'all to have to be in the rental business. We don't want you to have to become a landlord just to the general public or something, just because someone gave you a house that's not right in your programs. It's a rare thing, but you know, we were donated a lot 20 years ago that we didn't know about till about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So, you know, it can happen. So.
But at what point is it, know it's
Yeah.
donated? I mean, sometimes you don't get it until there's a death.
Right.
Even after the death, you have to.
I guess it would just
You have to wait a month before it's actually
just notification to us, yeah. And,
just a letter.
mhm. And see, then they may put a restriction on the deed that you can't sell it. And then you're like,
And you
gee,
have to-
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be either or, you know. But we know of, I mean, there are houses that are licensed that were gifted to DDSN. And you certainly have some, yeah. Yeah.
Questions going once, going twice? Thank you, Vicki. Whenever you see Chris Clark, it's me. Drawer number 3. Chris, I want to just make everybody aware that on January 1st, HHS has reintroduced the podiatry benefits for adult Medicaid beneficiaries, state plan service. It was discontinued in 11, now it's reintroduced. I do recall seeing some situations where consumers were using personal funds for podiatry, and this opens the door for Medicaid if it's medical necessary. Number 4, another notification. On January 1st, HHS raised the rates for LPNs and RNs. I think this impact on you should be 0, because the way the bands work is all LPN and RN bills that come in, we pay, and does not get charged to your waivers. That's correct. Give me some nods over here.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
so it affects us, it does not affect yours.
Nursing is an outlet.
Right, right, so we pay that. But just for your information,
It does have a steep marketplace.
I knew there was something not missed, Ralph. I know it.
We're
Because they're
paying.
making more now.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, what you're gonna demand.
Oh, that,
Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
we're talking about as far as how much is coming out of your check, you know,
Market has.
but we'll have to pay your nurses more.
It does affect them all, I agree. Number 5, eligibility effort funding.
That's
We handle that.
That's done.
Number 6, case management and EI rate increases. This goes back to the General Assembly's 2% increase that affected all the all the providers, and the question was case management EI. Director Baker has agreed to pay the 2%. In early December, they had one of their internal hearings, and they approved the 2%. We were meeting with him yesterday. We said, well, has the money, is it in the rate yet? He did not know that, but it has been approved to go in effect January 1st. Our hope is the details will follow out, so by the time we do the billings, the rate will have gone up the equivalent of 2%.
So, I hate to ask this question, but what about July through December?
Good question.
In front of the commission at the next meeting, they have the choice as to how to do this. If they're going to do it on FTEs or production, unit production, so the money would go into the unit as far as that money would go. You can pay for it, you can just divide it amongst everybody, or you can divide it amongst everybody based on their FTEs, or you can divide it amongst everybody about the amount of production they have had. In other words, if the unit is, if it's 20, it was $20 a unit, now it's 22, then go back and look at all the units you produced and pay the 22 versus the 20. As far as it will go, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah. The one thing we have learned is the General Assembly doesn't want it back, right?
Yep.
So the state funds,
They don't want it back.
they don't want it back. So the state funds that weren't matched are going to be available and going to be distributed, but the commission has to decide, as Mary said,
As
how.
how they want to distribute.
So
So
it's-
it'll be up to them. They will not leave it up. We're going to calculate it both ways for them and give them the numbers. I think basically it's going to be as far as the money, how the money would go. If we put it in the units, it probably is not going to cover all the units that were generated. So,
How do we calculate it on it? How do we calculate all our other?
because the FTEs are different from when we started the beginning of the year till we are now. So, but that, it's going to be up to them. Those are the two possible ways to calculate. Ralph, if you can think of a third possible, I'd be happy to present it to them. But it is not up to you, it is up to the commission. But if you have another way you want to present it, that's fine. Give it to me and I'll have Chris crunch the numbers. Because really we want to do is crunch the numbers so they know how much is going out there. We might have to kind of backfill with a little bit of our own money to make sure that everybody gets the same.
So you said FTE was not a one.
FTE is another, FTE or production. How many units you actually serve, because if the rate was in effect on July 1st, you would not have gotten paid on FTEs, you would have gotten paid with the new rate. So actually, that is the number that you should probably use.
It wasn't.
But it's a rate. Again, Ralph, you're missing the point. It's a market rate. You never miss it. But if you can come up with a third way to do it,
We're gonna get the most fairest way we can possibly do it.
I think the third way was to give the money back, and they said.
They said no. All right, we're gonna move on to number 7, DocuSign Basics.
This will be easy. We're still having a few issues with DocuSign. I'm getting some contracts back. The main issue is the witness signature. It would just say like DDSN witness with somebody's name there. So there's also about 15 contracts sitting out there in cyber land that haven't been signed by providers waiting. Once they get to us, I sign it and Chris signs it like 5 minutes later. He's fast. So once it gets to us, it'll get back to you very quickly. So if you all would just check your email and see if you have anything out there. If you're thinking, gosh, I've never gotten a copy of Amendment 5 back, email me and I'll resend it to you just to make sure. For clarity, we came up with a nice little DocuSign instruction basics. I've asked IT to put it out on Business Tools under the contract information folder. So that will be there for you guys to reference if you're still having issues with that. But overall, I think it's working really well. Everybody feel pretty good about it. Saving a lot of paper.
Just give me a list of who's got contracts out there and I'll send them a reminder.
Send them a little reminder,
Yeah.
okay.
They probably don't know it's out there, or they just.
I've
not seen it.
resended them. I've resent them like 3 times.
No,
So.
then it's.
So no, there's
We got multiple times that we already had them completely signed.
Shouldn't have, unless they were still sitting in the phone.
Amendment two, I think.
You got a couple times?
It wasn't just me, it was the other people within my office.
That would be some kind of weird glitch with the system, because a while back, maybe it was right when but,
That happens to me when I forget to assign it to something.
when you forget to, when you forget to assign it.
That Deborah did, if you have the same person witnessing every time, you can send them an email, and then when you sign it, it automatically goes to that witness.
Correct.
You don't have to say submit to witness.
We'll talk, just email.
It's a huge.
That's the easiest way to do it.
It's a little bit, it's another step for the admin, but
And if
it's
you're not
okay.
signing your contracts, don't plan on buying any houses until you learn how to use DocuSign. Because I think real estate agents live on it.
So they do.
If you do that and that person's not there, then it is stuck.
Stuck in there.
That person comes back. So that's the advantage of having it come back to you, so you know who's there, that you would like to witness it. You can
Pick that person who never takes any time off. There's
And
gotta be one.
If they're only out for a week of vacation, it's not a big deal, but if they're out for months, then it might be a big deal.
Or they quit and they didn't tell you.
That's right, so that's that one. I'll go ahead and go on to the next one. I have the top 3 things that I get the most questions about. So number 8 was the request for adult day unit reduction for the current contract period. I just wanted to let everybody know kind of what you need to send to make that happen. If you have weather closures for this fiscal year, just send an email with a summary that says our day program was closed on the dates, and I can figure it out from there. Just need an email. We haven't had a lot of weather stuff here recently. We had kind of a light year so far, but knock on wood, right? If you're requesting reductions due to the fact that the consumer is authorized for less units than the 520, you need to send a little spreadsheet to me that's got a summary. Johnny, this is how many up, and just summarize it and total at the bottom. This is how many units we need to have reduced because of authorizations, but we also need copies of all the authorizations. Right? Actual copies. And then just send that to me. I've gotten, I think, from 3 providers that have taken the time to do that. And so those are the 2 things that we'll go ahead and reduce your current contract. Then you won't have to worry about it at the end of the year. Go ahead and have that off your plate.
Yeah. Make sure you look closely at what they're authorized for and how much they're authorized for. And if they're not coming, have a powwow with the family, because you want butts in your seats. We need to get attendance up. But if they still don't want to come, then it's the only way you can take costs is saying we don't have people here at this level, and so we can let staff go. That's the only way to watch day program costs. But unless you have, kind of like the daycare thing, if people don't come, if you have kids in daycare, if you have kids in daycare, you pay whether you go or not. Because they have to have staff there, back to you. So if you know ahead of time that they only come 1 day a week, you don't have to have the same staffing level. You get a bunch of them.
Okay, and then number 9 was tracking B and I, and for as long as we still have the B's and the I's, we want to keep a good, tight handle on it. I want to make sure that you guys are getting paid for your consumers. It would be a really good plan to keep up with your consumers throughout the year. And I've had a couple providers that have come to me months and months after the year is over and said, oh, we never got paid for Johnny from last year. And that's a little bit more problematic than if we could find it this year, if there's some kind of an issue. So a couple things you can do to help with that is get your provider official listing that most of you got with amendment number 2. A couple of you may have gotten it with amendment 1 if you didn't have any changes between 1 and 2. It is a complete list of everybody you were paid for in your original contract, your B's and your I's. You've only had 1 amendment since then. I'm getting ready to do another one. So you take that little attachment that has the changes and you add that in to your provider official listing, comings and goings. Then I would go out on R2D2 and run your consumer waiver budget report. You key in band B and run that and see who you come up with, and then key in band I and see who you come up with. Check that and against, who you've been paid for on your contract. And I would also check your waiver credit reports to see who you're getting charged for. And at any point in any of that, and Glenn and I, we do this every day. So if there's anybody that you're like, he has the most B&I consumers in the state. But if you have somebody that you're like, wait a minute, I'm getting hit on the waiver credit, I don't have a ban for this person, what's going on? Or I have a ban for this guy, but I can't see his budget, what's going on? It's a very quick, simple process for me to track that down for you and say, oh, well, they're not your consumer, or the budget's under the wrong provider, or the financial manager's wrong. It's a very, very, very manual process on my end. So I just want to make sure that you guys are helping, and we're helping each other to make sure that everybody's getting the right B's and I's, because 1 or 2 B's and I's can really make a difference in your check, So anytime you have a question, you can email me and say, could you look up so-and-so and tell me what's going on? And I'll do it pretty quickly. So.
And we're finding that utilization on these services is starting to really go up. So I don't think it's one reason. I think it's there's multiple reasons for it. I know that when we put all these bands out here, a lot of those were kids. Now they're coming of age. So they're accessing adult services where they only had respite before. So PCA is coming online, other things are coming online. Day program, adult day health is really going through the roof, which I don't understand. But apparently, if they're going to IEP meetings, and you've got adult day health providers who are sitting at IEPs, you're got such an inappropriate service for a child. But anyway, you really got to watch those waiver credit reports. You're really going to have to watch that flow of money, because we are seeing a huge increase in utilization. So
you want your bands.
You want your bands, but you also want to see, you'll be seeing the same thing and saying, it's more than that, because a lot of folks are using the money that they weren't using in the band B's and I's to supplement the day program or supplement residential programs. You're going to have to start living in the world, and I think I've said this 100 times, where your programs stand on your program's own feet. So if your residential program is sucking wind and you're using money from your band B's and I's, you're going to have less money over there to move. And if we go to the point where you're actually paying for the service based on who's out having the service, you're going to have to live within the budget of that service. So why not start now and getting disciplined in that, to where you're watching overtime and how you do hours and any kind of funky staffing patterns that you have. We have discovered that when we've gone to places that are having severe financial issues, it's mostly staffing. And there's no reconciliation of overtime requests, that the people that are getting the overtime are the ones that are approving the overtime. That's never a good idea. And then as you go, even when you say it out loud, it doesn't sound like a good idea. But there's also some funky, we need weekend help, so we're going to pay more. We're going to give you more hours, but we're only going to make you work this many hours. Those are the things you really have to crack down on. And if you don't have that discipline now, it's not going to turn on a dime for you when funding changes. So now is the time to do that. And with utilizations going up, it's going to crunch you into that quarter anyway. So, that's what needs to start. You need to start looking at those residential and day programs and making sure they're surviving on their own. Is why you need people coming to the day program. If they're only coming 1 day a week and you've got full staff for that entire week, and you've got a person that only comes 1 day a week, or 1 unit a week, even worse, you can't sustain that.
What about situations where it's the opposite?
That you have too many day program people?
Well, no, you get killed on Band B. It's one way of your budget. So, because what we're winding up doing now, we're winding up cutting services in a day, figuring out a way to cut back in our day and our residential to cover the Band Bs.
What about the eyes? The eyes are not setting? Not anymore? Okay. And that, I've always said that day was coming. I mean, you can,
Yeah.
when all the eyes got thrown at us in the beginning, there was a big variance between the two. But over time, and as we see in the usage go up, it really depends on who you have. If you've just got a bunch of children, then you're still living large. But if you've got mostly adults that are utilizing these services or figuring out how to get a respite sitter in there, and their numbers are going up, yeah, utilization's kicking butt. So that is a problem. But that is why we want to say, because all the liability's on you right now, Jerry. Once we switch over to the other world where there's no bands, it's not capitated anymore, when we pull that in, the liability is going to be on us to make sure we have the match for that kind of stuff. So,
Any discussion of capping that waiver,
capping which waiver?
the idea?
Do you remember last time that happened?
I know.
I'm going to tell you, the way to, and it's not really capping, but it's providing the needs of the people and paying for the needs that they have, versus just saying, here's the band or here's the money, is to have individual budgets. And basically have a good assessment that tells you what this person requires for service. That in itself is a natural cap. So your really high people, you have a realistic budget to serve them. And the people that only need $2,000 a year, you have a realistic budget to serve them. And as their lives change, the budget changes.
That would be the idea.
That is where we need to go.
That's right, but we're not going there right now. Actually, it's going the opposite.
We're not going the opposite. We're going to unwind those Band Bs and Is first. And that's what, to me, for some agencies like you, that would be financial relief. For some other agencies, they're living on those Band Bs and Is, and we need them to get back so they can float their own boat. And there's some folks that don't realize that that's what they're doing. And we need them to thoroughly understand the system, because once you understand the game, you can play it. So, but we know that especially if you've got a lot of community bands, you're going to end up in that hole. It's just going to happen. It's happened more in counties that didn't have large residential programs. But if it's happening in Spartanburg, I mean, it's going to happen everywhere. You're starting to see that gap almost disappear. And then at some point, the liability is going to be too much for you to bear. That's why we're trying to make. I mean, it's not that we want to take your money away from you. It's like, it's liability that needs to come away from you.
Right, and that was the conversation we were having earlier at our providers meeting, is that some of us, sooner is probably better than later.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
And consider, I mean, I think this is an argument you heard from me when we were in the meetings with HHS years ago. Those bands are already fee for service for the most part, except for the day program. So it's figuring out a good day program rate. And then the other ones are already direct bill. They're already services that are not, you guys aren't, it's not a service you're providing. So it can go. But that is, yeah, and you're right. In the beginning, I was concerned because everybody's going to be upset about it, but we watched that utilization go up and up and up. There's people who are learning to play the game and knowing how to get their hours and finding people to do the hours, which is the big part. But then I think we also have a slew of kids we put on that waiver that are now 21 and older. Mm-hmm. If you look at 5 or 6 years, they've just aged into adult services, and it's just blown us up. And I am concerned about so many kids, well, I say kids, but 21-year-olds going into adult day health care. It's just not the most appropriate service for them.
They're going in at 18, 19, not going back to school.
That's
crazy.
And for the most part, those services do not like to take people with behaviors. So they're taking people that should be going out and learn how to work. And it's a real shame. I don't know how to, they've got a very, very strong lobby. And I don't know how to fight against it.
Our rate needs to
be competitive.
Yeah, because that's our competition.
Well, that's the other thing. In fact, we had a meeting with HHS yesterday, and one of the things I said to them is we have never had a difficulty of care rate in day programs. But how can you have difficult people in residential and then march them over to a day program and not have the same issues? People don't heal on the way over to the street. Their behaviors go away. You still have that difficulty of care. And here we are paying adult day health care this rate. They don't take difficult people, and we're expected to do it for almost half.
Right.
And it's not right. We have to have, and that's why those individual budgets are so important, because then we can put an acuity rate in all the services that we provide. Because I'll bet you a respite center will make the same argument. PCA service will make the same argument. Yes.
What I was curious about is the conversations or amount of communication you're having with the State Board of Ed. As you talk about this 18 and 21, I think about some of what we went through in York County firsthand, that we think we've got pretty good with the school systems transitioning into adulthood. In fact, we don't. We think they're getting prepared. This seems like in that whole general area of thinking, are you having any luck or conversation with anybody as you settle in the role at the
We're talking about post-secondary technical training, going to technical school. We're putting a team together to work on that, but, I went to an IEP this morning, and my idea of transition goals it's not their ideas of transition goals, so it is a disconnect, but that's not right now. We're worried about paying for services, but we do have a project going with them to work on post-secondary educational opportunities for children with disabilities, and not just high-functioning autism, which is where everybody wants to concentrate, but all folks. And out of a project in New York we had wanted to start, and it was received very well by the joint, the Joint Legislative Committee or Joint Community. It's a committee of legislators that also have community people on there. They go around the state, listen to children's issues, but I've been on it for a while now, and I've not heard one issue for a child with a disability. So it's been very frustrating. And so this year, I actually presented to the work group the talk about the post-secondary thing, and they're actually putting it on their agenda for next year. So there will be hearings around the state. We need our providers to stand up and talk at those hearings. We need our parents to stand up and talk at those hearings about educational opportunities for their children to learn trades. And I'm talking about culinary arts, I'm talking about welding, I'm talking about the trades that are out there for them to learn in an environment that they can be taught at their level to be successful. So it's on their agenda. And these folks propose legislation. That's what comes out of this committee, is actual legislation. So this year it was all about the vaping, or lack thereof, and it was all about tanning beds. I'm like, after a while, I'm tired of hearing testimony about tanning beds. I know, they're bad for you. They cause cancer. Okay, we need this for our kids, because I don't hear anything about our children. So that was brought up, and they're real receptive to it. It went over very well, and they put it on their agenda for next year. So it's a step in the right direction, but that's the only thing I can think of that would answer that question positively.
Number 10, Casey.
State-funded community supports for 2018. Most of y'all worked with Yihong when she was here, and have the documentation for that and have agreed on those settlement numbers for that. So we are going to be settling with those amounts either to y'all or to DDSN. Those will be on your next payment schedule. That's January 16th. I will be sending, I know those emails from Yihong were quite a while ago, so I will be sending emails out to you just to refresh your memory and let you have the backup for it. For state-funded community sports 2019 settlements, those have just been completed. Y'all were working with Donna Johnson on those numbers. So those settlements will be taken a month later on your February 16th payment schedules, either given back to you, the funds will be either given back to you or taken. And if you would like the backup for 19, just let me know. I know Donna was working with most of y'all, so that's more recent, so you probably have those numbers. But if you would need those numbers, let me know. But I'll be sending out the emails for the 18 settlement amounts this week, tomorrow and Thursday.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Are you, if there's any difference with what we discussed with Donna? Are you going to? We left it at, Donna said it needed to be approved by Chris.
Email. I'll talk to Donna. I'll talk to Donna and we'll call you.
All right, number 12, GASB 4575. This has to do with the retirement accrual and the OPEB accrual. We have had a policy to allow them into your cost reports, and we are now taking the position that we cannot use them as Medicaid costs. I think the impact to you, I think, is negligible, although Chris was telling me there's a couple of percentages that may affect you, and I'd open it to the discussions. But from our perspective, when we do cost reports, HHS has said, look, we're not going to accept those accruals as Medicaid costs and raise the rate so that they're raising a rate on an accrual that may never be paid. So what they're saying is, and also it does distort our cost reports. So
Unless, of course, you actually pay it.
if it's not accrual.
If it's a real cost.
No, if you have an expense, or I think there's some accounting rules that if you anticipate paying it within 6 months, you can claim it as an expense. But Chris is going to come out with a directive, if he hasn't already, you know Chris, that's going to clarify to your external CPAs on how to account for it, and we'll be providing training so that our cost reports and our financial statements clearly delineate these two accruals going forward. Any questions of that? I will defer to Debbie, but that's the short version of that decision. Number 13, state-owned property. I'll keep this short. We talked about the human service providers a little bit, and Mary talked about it a little bit earlier. We have 65 properties, some 2- or 3-day programs, a couple administrative buildings, and 60 residential settings. My rough calculation, that's about 10% of the settings out there. We own them, and they are on the older end of the spectrum. They have maintenance issues. Our pattern and our directive is we pay for them, and it's laid out. And it takes a lot of our time. I think it takes a lot of your time. There's debate of who pays for what, and it's at the point where we need to sit down and look at how we move forward with this legacy system. Now, I know when you're getting something where costs have been paid for, it's never in the direction of goodness. But at the same time, I'll go back to what Vicki said. Some of these may not have been rolled because of the nature of the property. So I would just say that we need to sit down. We're going to come up with all these properties, what we historically, the expenses that we paid for them. And we're going to try to negotiate turning these properties over to you, how that looks, what it looks like, what are the carrots, what are the sticks. That will be determined. I'm hopeful that it'll be a win-win in there, because the key thing is keep the equity in the system and keep the equity rolling in the system. That's the key thing. And if that happens, then it's good for the system. So I don't want to spend a lot of time debating that topic now, but sometime in the next month or two, we will get our thoughts together, get some sort of white paper, send it out to you as to, hey, this is what we think the issue is, and then we'll come together as a group and we'll start hammering on a way forward. So that's out there. I don't want to prejudge how it's going to work. All I know is we have to address it if we really want to go to a fee-for-service world and have some fairness and equity across the board. And particularly, these are properties that may not be being maintained to the level they should because of this. You know, when you don't have one person responsible for it, you know, it could easily, things could go unaddressed while you're debating who pays for what.
Do you think that there's a possibility that providers are not cooperative? First of all, do you have a target date for completing this?
No.
There's no target date. So if a provider wasn't cooperative with, I don't want to say the provider's not cooperative, you did not come to any agreement. Would you then seek a provider to operate that facility?
I don't want to get to the edge of the cliff decisions. Let's try to work them all out. And if we're in a situation, there may be an ultimate final decision. Hey, that's fine. You're welcome out of the house. We need you to pay rent on your ICF. I hope it never gets there, Ralph. All I'm saying is I think we can negotiate our way forward to the best interest of consumers and find ways to make this happen.
Oh, Ralph.
Here's one that, Chris explained it to me, and I'm going to give it to you in 1 minute, and I will take no questions on this at all. Number 14, reporting of gains and losses on intermediate care cost centers. Essentially, what he said was, there were some questions about if you have an item, so you wrecked your car, and you sold it for a loss. Well, you're immediately going to take that loss and expense somewhere. There's a debate, what cost center you take it in. His direction was, you take it in the cost center that the current depreciation rolls into. Okay, I don't think anybody in this room even cares about that. But I told Chris I would do it. Does that help anybody?
I agree.
Okay, good. Okay, so it's just, hey, if there's ambiguity, Chris will go hit it. So that's good. Interpreter process improvement coming. Interpreter services. The process improvement is the bills are coming in a little wonky. There's some math errors in there. Chris is building a smart spreadsheet. It's like a macro, so that you can plug it in, and we're going to take all the math and extensions out of it, so that the invoice will be more auto-populated with basic information.
Correct.
Okay.
They're really hard to read. They're having a lot of issues with errors in the math and not being able to read the writing. So this will just take all of that out of there, and it'll make it easier all across the board, really.
Number 16, insurance reserve fund rate increases. I got a memo here on December 10th, and I think we should just send this out after the meeting. They do this every year. I mean, not everybody has insurance reserve fund, but I think a lot of you do. And they come out with the rate increases, and the rate increases are a little stiff. But just for your information, for non-state entities, it's 20% increase in your tort rates, and for prepaid legal defenses for non-state entities, it'll be increased from 10 cents per dollar to 30 cents per dollar. So there's some pretty steep increases, and we'll send this out to you just so that you're aware that rates are going up in expenses. Number 7.
Effective July 1.
Oh, yeah.
July 1, 2020. Yes. So we have 6 months' notice that it's coming. Number 17, DD Council funding notification. We'll send this out as well. Chris is, there is a request for proposal from DD Council. Have you guys seen this, or is that news to you? We'll send it out to you, but just to make sure you're aware of it, and you can probably take advantage of it. Number 18, Glasso Learning Center. Chris went to a CPE training for a CPA, and there was a person, I think, assuming Glasso, was given a presentation, a very technical accounting. It talked, basically financial statements, FASB, GASB. But he was persuaded that it was valuable and done in a very, very well mannered, and he wants to open that up to obviously all providers and even your external CPAs at a future date. So that's coming. And we're paying for it. And lastly, the SCW4 is now available. Mm-hmm. And
Go to the IRS website and. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead and say it.
Oh, no,
I
go
knew
ahead.
enough to be dangerous on that one.
No, it's, the annual W-4 now is available out there for 2020. And you can just go out to the South Carolina Department of Revenue or website and print it and refill it out if you want to. And you don't have to fill it out every year anyway, as far as that goes. It's just to notify you that it's out there.
But the feds don't have it anymore. That was the key distinction.
Yeah. South Carolina unveils a South Carolina W-4 for 2020 state allowances.
And last but not least is, you drop it there. It's just the new mileage rate from the Comptroller General it actually, I think it went down 0.5 cent.
0.5 cent.
And he just wanted to make you aware that it's gone down 0.5 cent and that the directive basically says that is your ceiling, but you can have your own policies if you want to elect to have it at a lesser amount. So you may want to consider updating your policies, but certainly the ceiling is 57.5 cents.
No, ours is a lot lower than that.
Yeah. And that is our menu for today. And we'll open the floor to questions, and a lot of smart people up here, so any questions you have?
Effective date on that change, that travel change.
I love Ralph.
Smart personal question.
Yeah, that might be Deborah Webber. Okay, I'm sorry, I did not hear
How do you see
when
it?
you said the
Love it.
state funded, so on number 11, the date for that.
Oh, that's me. Number 11?
February 16th, February
I
16th.
thought that probably was, because that was a smart, yeah.
How did you not know it was me, Ralph? I'm your buddy. 19, you're wanting to know about 18 or 19? 19.
We got the letters, those are imminent for 18.
Imminent.
19.
February 16th, on your February 16th payment schedule. But I'll send you an email with the detail. How about that? Just for you, Ralph, because you're my bud.
Oh, now you're creating a problem.
Oh, stop that.
We always suspected favoritism.
No, that's
You're taking somebody's soul.
that's called problem prevention.
Any questions, anything, anybody? Ralph, are you done for today?
I'm done.
Don't let it take too long. You wait too long, you'll come up with something. That's what he does. Right?
Thank you, everybody.
Argue with himself.
Thank you.
Cracks me up.
Till next month.
Just a
That was
great
not
day.
bad.